Okay, Taylor, we are live. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm really well. I'm so excited to spend some time with Taylor tonight and I haven't done a live in a while. I've been super busy. And so this is the perfect way for me to get back into, just being out and with our people and our tribe. So let me just say that this is broadcasting in my two groups and my page. And then I guess, Taylor, you're also showing it wherever you're showing it. And Taylor and I are both in the health space. We are both very committed to helping people attain their best health. And I'm going to let you give a little bit more intro about yourself. But the difference between, well, there's many differences. One really big one is that Taylor can cook amazingly. I can't. Taylor is an amazing chef and works with people with food. And I'm happy to get something healthy that nourishes my body down my throat. But you make it taste good, and yeah, and you know what you're doing in the kitchen, and you really help people specifically with prediabetes, right? Insulin resistance and diabetics, and how to reverse all of that. So that's what you do. We'll talk about what I do in a little bit, but could you share a little bit about your background, Taylor, and what you do?
Absolutely. I would love to. So, I had worked as a chef in Michelin-starred kitchens in New York, where I'm from, for years and years. I mean, this is like a lifetime ago, it feels like. And then I was very lucky to hold positions on some really fabulous high-end yachts around the world. And in that circuit is when I got to, when you're in a restaurant and you're in the kitchen, you don't really get to interact with the customer, right? It's kind of like what you see is what you get is on the menu. People know what they're coming in for. When I got to start, having and developing relationships with my clients that were on board, I started to discover how many people are really suffering with chronic diseases that are really affected by it. It really starts with their nutrition. And I thought, you know what, it was, all these light bulbs were going off at the same time. I was struggling with a lot of things in my health, especially chronic stress, Linda, which is, something that we've shared in common when we talked. I was working 90-hour work weeks plus, and even though I was, cooking all this gorgeous food for all these other people, I was barely, shoveling in whatever leftovers were like over the sink in between. And my health started to really take a plummet. And that's when I started to take a much closer look. I'm dealing with food all day, every day. It's what I love. I love nourishing people in that space. But how much did I really know about how and what we eat and how, it affects us? And not just, when it gets to the case of chronic disease, but, hormone balancing, energy levels, when I first started learning about our gut and microbiome, it blew my hair back. So I became really, really like a nutrition nerd. And I've been really lucky to study with some of the top programs in the country. And now I hold my board certification in holistic nutrition. So I'm able to take, what I love to do, which is really help people love what they eat, but now take it a step further and have them understand the correlation between what they're eating and their health, and help them to develop better habits. But with that said, I'm very lucky. I work with people specifically with prediabetes and type 2 diabetes, like you said. And while a really big focus on the work we do together is nutrition and shifting a lot of what people eat and how they eat, people are always super surprised when I start asking, what's your stress level like? How well are you sleeping? Tell me about these things, because, and this is why I'm so excited to speak with you, and thank you for inviting me to be here. People don't realize how their stress affects their blood sugar, right? I feel like everybody's kind of heard what you eat affects your blood sugar and your insulin resistance. And I know we're going to get more into that, but people are shocked when they hear how their stress levels are really fueling that as well. So I'm really excited to talk with you about that this evening. Thank you.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. And I think what's similar between us or about us is that we have this health background.
Mhm.
So you're a board certified holistic nutritionist practitioner, and I'm a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and health transformation coach. And so we both had this very, big, broad understanding of health. And the way that I view it anyway is that there's root causes of why people are unwell. There's several reasons. When you look from a functional perspective, there's several reasons why people are not living and feeling as great as they want to feel. They don't have the energy. They're really stuck. And so there's multiple root causes. And you and I both sort of addressed all of those with our clients, right? And both of us got to the point where we realized, I want to focus on one thing.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
doing all of that.
It's way too big, right?
And there's a lot of people doing, well, at least in the functional health space, there's a lot of people doing that. But I found what I am really loving is what I'm doing, really focusing on now. And I think you also found what you really love, because before, when you were working with your clients, you had a really comprehensive program you had a team of people that was doing fitness, right? And what else did you do with people before you?
And we still, we still have that wonderful team and we still take that approach. But what I found was when people are at the point, and in my case, they've just come face to face with this diagnosis, oftentimes people are like shocked. They're not really quite sure what to do. I was finding over time that making too many changes right in the beginning wasn't serving them well, mostly because it was stressing them out even further and putting more stress on their body, right? So right now what I do is we focus on the nutrition piece first, and we get that gut healing, we get rid of that insulin resistance, and then we can introduce some of the other very important other factors and start supporting their health from that end on the back end. Because like you said, the scope is just too big. And if people are making too many changes at once, right? I think we've all done that, right? Where you're like,
Yeah.
on Monday, I'm going to start and I'm going to eat this and I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to get 8 hours of sleep, right? And it's just too big. And then we feel stuck when we can't do it all at one time. So that's the approach that I've taken now. And it's been working out well for me. And I know, and you had a similar approach too. People come to you and they have in their mind that it's like this one thing that they need to address. But oftentimes there's so many other factors, right?
Yeah. I work with people with chronic health issues who really have been struggling, autoimmune diagnoses, things like that. And again, there's multiple root causes. And I was doing all of that with people: parasites, their gut, mold toxicity, heavy metals. And what I really saw was that their nervous system, if they are locked in a nervous system that's stuck in fight or flight for whatever reason, current circumstances have them feeling overwhelmingly stressed, or previous traumas. And trauma can sound so dramatic, and oftentimes it is, but oftentimes it's not. It's just an accumulation of events, but that are locked in their body, and that keeps their nervous system turned on. So what I saw was, no matter how much work we did on their gut, whatever we changed with their diet, giving them supplements, bringing down inflammation, this piece would eventually unravel all of that.
It's beautiful.
So now I like to really focus on this piece, and you love to focus on really this insulin resistance and this diabetic, like that exact thing, and just using your skills as a chef. So I just think it's really cool. And let's dive in a little bit then and talk about insulin resistance and diabetes and blood sugar. And maybe could you give a good definition of insulin resistance if people don't really know what that means? If they've been diagnosed, they probably know, or maybe they don't.
I'm surprised some people don't know, right? Because I think And I have a lot of doctors in my family, and I have a lot of friends that are doctors. I have a lot of friends that are alternative health practitioners as well. And the thing is that many doctors, when they diagnose somebody with a high A1C or has, high blood sugar, and they're able to determine that they're either, a borderline, right, getting close to that place, or they've already passed that threshold and their A1C is elevated and now they're at risk, is that oftentimes the conversation quickly goes into management as opposed to getting a little bit deeper and understanding why. So it's been my experience when people come to me, they're looking to manage their blood sugar as opposed to reversing their insulin resistance, because they haven't even gotten that far in the conversation to understand why is it their blood sugar is so irregular and erratic anyway. So I think that's such a great place to start. So to break it down quite simply, and it's different, type 1 diabetics, which is technically autoimmune, it's because their insulin levels, their pancreas isn't producing at a certain place. But when we're talking about lifestyle induced insulin resistance from a dietary perspective, what we're really talking about is, and that's why poor old carbs always get such a bad rap. When we're eating carbohydrates or any food really that we're eating, our muscles need the glucose. Our body is breaking all of that down, breaks down the starch into glucose, right? And the glucose is then floating around in your digestive tract. And that's what people are known as blood glucose. That's your blood glucose. That's the sugar in your blood. And what has to happen is the glucose goes to the muscle cell, and it needs to get into that muscle cell, but it needs like a secret key, special password. And that's what the insulin provides. So the glucose can't leave your blood and go into the muscle cell without the insulin. So, and there's like a special combination. So the insulin, sets off, this chain reaction of different enzymes. I won't even go that far. Let's just say this. You need the insulin to unlock the door to get into the muscle cell. So if the insulin is trying and that lock is all gummed up, it's all jammed up, what happens then is your body has all of this glucose circulating and it needs to get rid of it, right? It needs some place to go. So that's oftentimes the first sign people notice before they're diagnosed with diabetes is this frequent urination, this constant running to the bathroom. And that's because your kidneys then kick into overdrive to try to excrete all of that glucose that's been building up in your blood. So that's why your blood sugar, right, raises and lowers, because now every time you eat, you don't have the key to get that glucose where it needs to go. That's why people have crashes too, right? Their blood sugar gets real high and then they just crash because their muscles never got that glucose, never got that fuel source. So what's happening when we're looking at dietary insulin resistance, why this is happening, it's often because of issues of built up saturated fat in the cells that is blocking the insulin from being able to do its job. So if we could then, from a dietary standpoint, look at, hey, instead of just like saying, man, I can never eat a bowl of pasta again because it spikes my blood sugar, or I could only eat half a banana. I had one woman actually that I was speaking with yesterday. She's like, I only had half a banana and my blood sugar jumped up to 286. And it's not the banana's fault, right? It's not the bowl of pasta's fault. Instead of managing the blood sugar and the erratic numbers, if we just look at the insulin resistance and how can we get rid of that buildup of saturated fat in our cells and get the insulin to start being more effective again, then we don't have to worry about it because the body is able to utilize the glucose as it needs and your body's able to function as it's intended to. So I hope that wasn't too long-winded of an answer, but many people don't even know how that works. So that's what's happening when we're looking at how food affects insulin resistance. But as we both know, that's not the only thing that can cause blood sugar spikes.
Yeah, stress does too, and we'll definitely talk about that. I also think, and this is sort of just how I think of it in my head a little bit, and see if I'm saying this correctly, since this is your specialty, but I feel like too, when blood sugar is constantly going up, and we'll talk about like because of stress, maybe you didn't eat anything, but your blood sugar is going up. As soon as your body sees that blood sugar is going up, it releases the insulin to keep the blood sugar level, keep it regulated. So it's releasing insulin, but now it's, that process is gummed up, as you said, or it's just happening over and over. And I kind of liken it to like having a kid where you keep yelling at them, clean up your room. And when you keep clean up your room, and after a while they just tune you out. That's like insulin resistance, right? It's like your cells just sort of like, yeah, there's that insulin again. But like, you know what I mean? It just becomes this cycle throughout the day so often that the cells.
Even more stress, right? For you as the parent, but also for your body, because your body's like, but now your body's trying to make even more insulin, right? And your kidneys are working harder to try to help it along. So now, your body's in even heightened stress place, right?
Right.
So it's just cyclical, right?
Yeah.
And it just keeps going in this horrible chain of events.
Yeah, and I thought that would be important for people to understand because, pumping out the insulin, not blood sugar rising, pumping out the insulin becomes this cycle, and it puts them in a really bad place. And you're right, the stress does really contribute to that greatly. So, and that's why, people will be like, I didn't really eat anything at all. Or even if I eat really healthy, or I'm not eating things that are high sugar, but my sugar is so wonky. And so, there's a lot of things that can stress the body out. You could have parasites, you could have other infections in your body. But one thing that I'm really focusing on is, again, that nervous system activation, that fight or flight that you're stuck in, and how that keeps, because let me talk about that, since you went into a little bit of the science of the insulin resistance. The science around the nervous system is when your brain perceives a threat, right? Oh, there's a tiger chasing me, I need to run, or I'm in an argument. Your body says you need energy to handle this event. You either need to fight or flight. You either need to run or whatever. So as soon as that happens, your adrenals release cortisol, and the job of cortisol is to get your body able to do the fight or flight. So what happens? All the blood gets shunted to your muscles, away from your digestive system, away from the immune system. So when you're stuck in fight or flight, you're not digesting well.
Yeah, right. Rest and digest, or fight or flight. Yeah, not
Right.
both.
Those are your two options. You can't be in both at the same time. So you're not going to digest well. Your immune system is going to say, this is not the time to fight a virus. I need to send all of my resources to fighting and running, because otherwise I'm going to be dead, right? That's the more important thing. And so people stay stuck in fight or flight, but there is no tiger. There is no life-threatening thing. They're just stuck in fight or flight. And so now the adrenals are pumping out cortisol, and that's telling the body release blood sugar. And now the insulin is going, oh, here's the wonky blood sugar. Like, we got to go get that out of the blood and make sure that doesn't stay elevated for any length of time. But after a while, your cells tune it out, like the teenager going, yeah, insulin, shut up, and then and now we're in a bad place. So you work with the food, I work with the nervous system and the stress and the emotional stuckness. And then those are two, to me, food and nervous system are two huge root causes. Like if you can get, if you can get your hands around those two, the body, in my opinion anyway, God made a magnificent machine. And our bodies really know. We've got checks and balances. We've got these lock and key systems. We've got hormones. We've got all these things that work beautifully together. Food is information to your body every single day, all day long. You're giving your body information with every single bite. And your nervous system is regulating all of those hormones and those chemical responses from your thoughts and your emotions telling your body what to do. You get those two things handled, I think parasites, like, no big deal. I think, I mean, I'm downplaying it a little bit, but really your body can handle the parasites. Your body can handle, the chemical buildup. Your body will do what it's meant to do. If you're giving it the right nutrients in the right way, and you're allowing it to calm down and get out of fight or flight, you've got it handled. So in my opinion.
Absolutely. And I'm curious to hear what your experience has been with the people that you help. But it's often been the case where I see that people have normalized, right? They normalize how they feel. They normalize the stress that they're under. And when I think, when you're talking about stress and being in that fight or flight, I think sometimes what I've seen is people mistake that for actually feeling like a mental burden or an emotional burden in that moment. But like you mentioned earlier, and I think it's really important to, to note again, that your body is in this place, whether or not you are consciously feeling like, oh, wow, I'm really stressed right now, right? So just because you're not necessarily being conscious or checking in with your emotional state to see, where you're at, your body, like Linda said, it has all these checks and balances. So all of these chemical reactions are happening, whether or not you're thinking about it. And I think it's so important that you said, this isn't just what's happening in this moment, you and I having a conversation. This is what happened last week and how that's accumulated now into a physiological response, right? Yep. It's what happened this morning. It's what you're worried about happening tomorrow. And what I see so often is that, especially, goodness gracious, with the last year and a half we've all had with COVID, chronic stress is something that is like such a part of our everyday lives that people have normalized it. Almost feel like this is just how you live now, right? This is just how I live now. And I get, my clients that come to me, with diabetes, and they're like, oh, but, I'm just old. This is just what happens now. Or, oh, this is just how it has to be now. And because we normalize it, we give it our power instead of really understanding that, like Linda said, you're giving your body the information. And if you change the information or how you're processing it, then you change how everything is interacting again, whether it's with food or however you're managing your stress and your thought processes, or finding ways to release that stress and, the hormones built up from those emotions as well. I think it's so important that you mention that.
Yeah, me too. I mean, because, life is going to be stressful, right? So if you don't learn how your body can navigate that and how to change your thought patterns, I'm sure you do a lot of mindset work too with your people, just because they have to change how they've been eating and their eating patterns. And I change, how they think, the filters that they look at their life through, so that, not that I change it, I work with them on helping them change it in a way that they can navigate through this life and still be in a home state of peace and joy. Otherwise, you're just like getting bombarded by this circumstance, that happens. You're just at the effect of life, knocked to your knees. You can't get back up, or you're being thrown around like a rag doll, because we live in a stressful, toxic world. So, are you able to say, I can still be responsible for my life and for the way I move through this life? Or am I just going to be a reaction to everything, to the point where, I cannot deal with anything? And it just, like you said, people do normalize. People normalize, well, this is how life is, or this is
not even your fault, right? It's just because that's a physiological response. Your body's like, okay, well, that's great. Like, what do we need to do to survive today, right? Like, let's not worry about it. Let's just kick it up into overdrive. And then you see everybody around you doing the same thing. And like you said, that you get into this reactionary response of, how do I manage, instead of, what do I do to take my power back, really,
Yeah. And live my life on my terms. And, In terms of grief, Taylor, I know that you know about my story and all of that, but grief and chronic stress, um, I've had my share, and I don't think a lot of people bury a child, but I have, and that's not what should happen. Um, and that is about as grieving and stressful as anything that I can imagine. And yet I can tell you that it is possible to live in peace and joy, even in the face of devastating grief. Like people, I think a lot of people think, if I have grief, I can never be happy again. If I have grief, life is never going to be the same. And I'm not saying that grief goes away. I will always miss my child,
Mm.
but you can still have peace and joy, and grief can come and go, like the ocean, like the waves of the ocean, and there's a time when it flows in and a time when it flows out. That's grief. But I mean, stress as well. Like, we all have whatever our circumstances are about stress, but we can learn to live in peace and joy. And that's what I really feel so blessed to be doing now. It's I did all the gut work with people and all of that, and this is so much better than talking about your poop. Just kidding.
And absolutely, and it's really, putting you in charge of your emotional state and how you are able to enjoy your life and move forward with those choices. But like you said, in doing that and going through that hard work, you're also taking control back of your physical health as well, which I know, like you're saying, it's a precursor. People come in and they want to say, oh, what, Linda, like, what pill do I need, to get rid of the parasites or to help with this? And, really having the ability and the steps and the tools and the guidance and the compassion from somebody who, has your experience to help people learn how to process and release so they can, take ownership again of their life and their feelings. It's just gonna, not only so they don't have to live in that horrible place of grief, but so they could actually live with some vibrancy and not, have it snowball into cancers or other horrible chronic diseases that are really induced by this type of overwhelming grief and stress and trauma.
Yeah.
That the body responds over time if it's still in this place of fight or flight or grieving.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because maybe we're getting a little off blood sugar. We can wind our way back to that. But
Right. I just love chatting with you.
I know. We'll talk about anything. And we will do it every Thursday. We're going to talk about something around health and something that we hope makes a difference for people. So we hope that you enjoy it as much as we love doing it. But things like cancer and diabetes, diabetes has a direct link to food, which is why your passion around food and your skill around food is so perfect to work with people, because I think that people, when they realize they have to change their diet, like, oh, I got this diagnosis and now it seems like life is going to be terrible. I'm never going to be able to eat anything good anymore. And
And that creates its own stress, right? I can't tell you how many people are like, oh, but I had to eat this many carbs, so my family wanted to have a pizza night and I couldn't sit and enjoy it with them because I had to eat this. Just the stress of thinking about food all day and weighing and measuring, that is enough to put you in a chronic place of discomfort in your body, right?
Totally, totally. So would you share a little bit about what, like, when you work with people, not everything, but like, what are some of the tools that you teach them?
Well, firstly, I think, like you said, it all starts with mindset and reminding people of who they are and that, showing them that they have the power to make change. And I think explaining the science behind behavioral change and the power of shifting your belief system is always the place that I start, because people can never achieve what they don't think is possible for them, right? And
Right.
cases, a lot of the people that I've worked with have been yo-yo dieting for their whole lives, right? Many of them have been overweight their whole lives. Many of them have been on some type of, whether it's keto or, just general calorie restriction or the shakes or whatever. And they just don't believe in themselves. They think there's something inherently wrong with them or their bodies, or I don't have the willpower, or I'm not motivated enough. And there's so much unnecessary shame that people put on your own shoulders. So we always start there, and just getting people to, have a little faith in themselves again. And also understand, like I said, the behavior of habit change is not making these big sweeping lifestyle changes, but it's really small, incremental, doable changes that you can do with consistency over time.
Yeah, yeah.
That's really right. We're the culmination of our habits over time. And then from that space, we're able to take a look at what they're eating and make subtle shifts, right? Without feeling like they have to deprive themselves. It's more about what can we include that's
Mm,
going to be really supportive to your health right now, that we say is going to maybe crowd out some of the other things. And I always say to my clients, like, I love pizza. Like, I'm a New York girl, like big folding slice. Like, I wouldn't want to live in a world where I couldn't have a slice of pizza from time to time, and I certainly wouldn't want my clients to live there either. So when you learn about how you can make smart food choices that aren't going to balance or manage your blood sugar, but help your body overcome the insulin resistance that's causing that in the first place, then you achieve freedom, right?
yes.
That's really what we're after. Learning to eat in a way that is a new lifestyle, right? Just a healthier lifestyle, not a diet, not something that you have to have all these rules about. But a lot of people don't know what that is. And I'm sure you see that too. It's the same thing, I'm sure, when it comes to grief and stress management, and people hear things the same way my clients hear things, like eat a balanced diet. And they're like, what's that? Or people, with stress or with grief, like meditate and visualize. And they're like, what's that? It sounds really overwhelming at first, some of
Yeah.
some of the things that are out there.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. And it is it's such a privilege to work with people and partner with them like shoulder to shoulder through that journey that they're choosing for their own benefit, for their life, for the impact on their family. Wanting to be around longer. Diabetes brings a lot of other health issues with it. So, and people don't realize that you can reverse diabetes. People think once you've been diagnosed, that's it. And
Reverse that insulin resistance and learn how to maintain that, right? Learn how to keep that going with healthy lifestyle practices, which of course include, stress management, nutrition, moving your body, sleeping better, all the things we all know that we should be doing,
yep,
right? That
yep,
have people implementing on our own without some guidance or an actual protocol to follow that is doable within the context of people's lives, right?
yeah, yep. So what else do we want to say, if anything, in terms of insulin resistance, diabetes, blood sugar, and stress before we, say goodnight? I think we talked about how stress is going to raise cortisol, which is going to send blood sugar out. Food is always, how you're eating is going to affect your blood sugar. And then understanding how to manage that insulin resistance, you can reverse a diagnosis like diabetes, which is what you do. And what I do is help people get out of that nervous system stuck, or recover from the past traumas of emotions that have not been able to release out of their body, and the thought patterns, that the anxiety or depression, however it's showing up, because all of that is stuck.
And that's keeping them stuck from moving forward too, and then contributing to,
Yes.
possible terrible long-term consequences. I don't know. I think what I like to remind people most is to have some grace with themselves. There's no way that we can all unlock the answers of, what we personally need to do to gain control over our emotional state or our physical body or, our health, our well-being in general, for the simple matter that when you're on the inside of the jar, it is impossible to read the label on the outside of the jar.
I always say that. I love that because it's such a visual. Yeah.
I love it too. And that's the thing. And I just, my heart always breaks when when I'm talking to new clients and they just beat themselves up because they feel like for some reason they have done something to put them in this place. And it's not the case. As you can see just from this short conversation, there's so many, and these are only two factors that affect, blood sugar issues, which of course lead to other, issues like, heart disease, et cetera, et cetera. But, these are just two of many, variables to consider. So there's no way that somebody going through their beautiful day-to-day lives is going to be able to, turn everything around by themselves. So have some grace with yourself because you're not at fault. There's nothing inherently wrong with you or what you're doing. But when you make a commitment to prioritize your life really, and, how you're feeling, then, then you're able to do better. When you're able to give yourself the opportunity to learn what you need to do and give yourself the time and the space to really prioritize that, right? Then when you know better, then you can do better. But
yeah,
yeah.
I love that. Yeah, that's very, very true. When you know better, you can do better. And you can't read the label when you're on the inside of the jar. So that's one of my favorite sayings. And so, yeah, it's really just as I said, a privilege to help people get to that point. So thank you for sharing your background with everybody and for being my partner in this conversation. And I just look forward to really sharing like a lot of health topics because you and I are, I think, equally as passionate about helping people and have really evolved our careers to the point where we're really loving the results that we get. And that's a good thing. And that feels good to talk about.
Yeah, it really does. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here. It's been such a pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks, Taylor. All right. Well, that was a quick, almost 40 minutes.
Yeah, we can go on for another hour.
Yeah. I don't see any questions or comments. This is streaming in multiple places, so I will go back. If you have any questions about diabetes, type 2 diabetes in particular, insulin resistance, how to be a chef on a yacht. Taylor's your girl, not me. If you have questions about, having stuck trauma in your body, living with chronic stress, not being able to move through past grief, that would be something that I could help you with. And if somebody wanted to work with you, Taylor, I can see that you have Green Roots Living is showing up. That comes up for you with your StreamYard. So Green Roots Living, is that the name of your website or how would people find you?
Yeah, I'm at greenrootsliving.com. And, it talks a little bit about what we do and how to get in touch with us. So, yeah, if you have any questions, you could reach out to me there or through Facebook.
Awesome. Okay. And if somebody wanted to ask anything of me, this is actually streaming on my business page, but it's Organic Health Journey. And in two groups, fatigue, thyroid, autoimmune recovery, and solutions, freedom to joy and peace. So yeah, we will look and see if we see any questions anywhere. We will definitely get back and answer them for you. And we'll see you next Thursday. We decided we were going to just chat on Thursdays, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do we know what we're going to talk about? Do we know what we're going to talk about next Thursday?
Maybe we should take a poll, see what the people have questions about.
I don't know how to do that, but if we can figure out how to do a poll. Okay.
But we're two very intelligent women, and I'm sure if we put our heads together,
yeah, we talk about health, but technology thing now I'm a little like, oh, okay, all right.
We'll figure talk about insulin resistance for 3 more hours, but I'm not sure we can figure that out. Well, I'm sure we can figure out a poll, yeah, or people can leave maybe in the comments if there's something that
Okay.
Perfect.
Or if not, we'll just figure a topic out, but we'll be back next Thursday night.
Sounds good. Thanks, Linda.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good night, everyone.